Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the City Planning Commission for Monday, September 18th. It is not Monday, September 18th. It is October 2nd, I believe. My name is Emily Koski, and I'm chairing today's meeting in place of President Olson. The city will be recording and posting this meeting to the city's website and YouTube channel as a means of increasing public access and transparency. This meeting is public and subject to the Minnesota Open Meeting Law. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify a quorum for this meeting.
Commissioner Alper.
Present.
Baxley is absent. Campbell.
Here.
Conley.
Here.
Emmerich.
Here.
Ford.
Here.
Koski.
Present.
Commissioner Marwa is absent. Meyer.
Here.
Olson is absent. We have 7 members present.
Let the record reflect, we have a quorum. With that, we will proceed to the agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the city's legislative information system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. We will begin with acceptance of the minutes of the regular meeting of October 2nd. May I have a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved. Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes and the minutes are adopted. We have an addendum to our agenda this evening, the Agri-Tax Increment Finance Plan for 901 27th Avenue South and 2728 Franklin Avenue East. Do I have a motion to formally accept this item and add it to the agenda?
So moved. Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries and the item has been added to tonight's agenda. Our next order of business is to organize the agenda, which is available on LIMS as well as the corner table if you have not seen it yet. I'll read through the agenda numbers and addresses and state whether it's slated for consent, continuance, return, withdrawal, or discussion. I'll also briefly explain the difference between consent and discussion items. Consent items are those that will be passed without discussion by the board. We'll be adhering to the staff recommendation listed on the agenda in the item's recommended motion section. Importantly, any applicable conditions will be listed in the same section. If you agree with this recommendation, including applicable conditions, you don't need to do anything. The commission will pass it as recommended. If you have any questions following the decision, please check in with the staff member assigned to that item. If you disagree with the recommendation, please indicate you would like to speak against the item when I ask, and we will put it on the discussion agenda. With that, the following items are on the agenda for this evening. Number 4, the commemorative street name addition, Oscar Pettiford Avenue. Staff is recommending this item for consent. Is there anyone here to speak against this item? Okay. Number 5, 920th Avenue South. Staff is recommending this item for consent. Is there anyone here to speak against this item? Sorry, my apologies. This item is recommended for continuing on to one cycle to our 10/16 meeting. My apologies. Number 6, amendment Title 20, Site Plan Review Standards. Staff is recommending this item for discussion. Additionally, the public hearing for this item occurred and was closed on our July 17th meeting. Number 7, Agri-Tax Increment Finance Plan, 901 27th Avenue South and 2728 Franklin Avenue East. Staff is recommending this item for consent. This item does not have a public hearing. So let's review the items on the agenda for consent. They are items number 4 and 7 for consent. Item number 5 will move for continuance, and item number 6 for discussion. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes and the agenda has been approved. We will proceed to handle the agenda in this order. First, we will vote on the consent item on the agenda that does not have a public hearing. After we have dealt with that item, we can proceed to our public hearing items. Do I have a motion to adopt item 7, the Agri-Tax Increment Finance Plan for 901 27th Avenue South and 2728 Franklin Avenue East on consent.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes. I will now open the public hearing on the consent items. Would anyone like to speak on item number 4? All right, I am not seeing any wanting to speak. I will now close the public hearing for that consent item. Do I have a motion to adopt items number 4 and 5 as recommended by staff?
Just 4.
Oh, sorry, my apologies, number 4.
So moved.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes. I'll now open the public hearing for the consent item. Oh, no, sorry, we do not have number 5, right? That has been moved. Okay, sorry, we moved a few things around here. So if you are here for agenda items number 4 and 7, your application has been approved. Good luck with your projects. Item 5 is recommended for continuance to the October 16th meeting. This item was noticed for a public hearing, and therefore we need to open the public hearing today. The commission will make a decision on the item on October 16th, but if you prefer to give your testimony tonight instead of on the 16th, you may do so. Otherwise, you will have the opportunity to also speak on the 16th. I will now open the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak to item number 5? I am not seeing anybody. I will go ahead and close that public hearing.
Are you closing it, or are you closing it on the 16th?
Oh, should I? Oh, I should wait. My apologies, clerk. Could I get clarification here? If we continue it, I think we should keep the public hearing open till, okay.
Yes.
I will not close that public hearing, so retract that. Then do I have a motion to continue item number 5 to October 16th, Planning Commission meeting?
So moved.
That has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all favors say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes, and item 5 will be moved to our October 16th meeting. Our next discussion item is number 6, Amendment Title 20, Site Plan Review Standards, which is being presented by Medel Mauto, pronounced, oh, sorry, my apologies. Thank you for, welcome.
You did it, you threw it.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. Again, my name is Medel Muta, and I am here to go over the most recent updates to the exterior building materials guidelines and to go over the material analysis that we started. After this, then I can open up for any questions that you may have. So I'd just like to start by explaining again why these guidelines are important. So exterior building materials have a variety of impacts on the quality and safety of the built environment, including life safety, building durability and sustainability, housing costs, and aesthetic compatibility with existing and historic building stock. Minneapolis has been experiencing strong growth in population over the last decade that has brought a significant amount of new development and new architectural technologies to the marketplace. The proposed guidelines are intended to strengthen the city's ability to regulate and communicate the standards by which we evaluate new construction. Having exterior building material guidelines is not something brand new to Minneapolis. We had guidelines in place from 2014 until 2021. And these guidelines came to be, they were created with the help of the Planning Commission. And they were to address issues like poor design, equity issues, busy material palettes, and building material failures. So, since 2021, in spite of having adopted policy guidance in Minneapolis 2040 and also the Minneapolis Plan for Sustainable Growth, the city has had no exterior building material guidelines or regulations in place and have not had tools to guide the durability and quality of exterior building materials. So the exterior building material guidelines will not be included in the zoning code apart from one reference for applicants to refer to a one-page guideline document, which is in front of you now. Again, it's a one-page document, and they are meant to be concise while providing maximum flexibility for developments to provide both affordable and quality environments throughout the city. They place a greater emphasis on utilizing more durable materials at the base of the buildings to enhance the public realm and the pedestrian experience, and to allow less durable materials that were not previously allowed in previous guidelines to be used at the middle, top, or as the trim or accent of the building. So these guidelines would apply to new buildings and additions subject to site plan review. They would not be applicable to 1 to 3 unit residential buildings, which are regulated differently. And the guidelines are also not applicable to recladding of buildings that were never subject to site plan review. So since the last Committee of the Whole meeting on August 17th, we have added 2 additional guidelines, and we also updated the diagrams to clarify the definitions of base, middle, and the top of the building. So the 2 new guidelines are as follows. The implementation of moisture systems where feasible is encouraged, and the use of recycled or repurposed locally sourced materials is encouraged. So as you may recall from our last meeting at the Committee of the Whole, we began to do a sustainability analysis and also a material analysis. So since then, we have consulted with the Rocky Mountain Institute on these guidelines and how we might incorporate sustainability, more intensive sustainability guidelines into the amendment. But we've determined after speaking with RMI that the exterior building guidelines are not the most effective place to do this because they do not take a comprehensive look at the building structure, the envelope, or the full assembly of a building, nor the finishes. So this is going to be a continued effort, likely involving multiple city departments, to implement the recently adopted Climate Equity Action Plan, to develop a process to analyze the embodied carbon of new building materials and set a goal to decrease embodied carbon. So again, we determined that this is not the best place for intensive regulations, but we added the following guideline: the use of recycled or repurposed locally sourced materials is encouraged. And I'd also like to just remind you that we have more sustainability regulations in our zoning code, chapter 540, built form overlay districts for the premiums. So moving on to the study that we did, we've looked a lot at this graph, right? That basically just compares the different embodied carbon emissions of different materials. With the help of Cody Fisher of Footprint Development and Chris Magwood of RMI, we took the study and expanded on it to study various materials and their embodied carbon and initial material costs compared to the carbon emissions and material costs over the lifespan of the building. So this diagram here is just a snapshot in time, right? It doesn't account for materials being replaced over the lifespan of a building. So this is what the meat of the study included. Again, we have this table that includes all of the materials. It includes the embodied carbon per square foot, the expected useful life of the material, which was taken from sources like Fannie Mae and CCPIA, and then the average of that was used to get the expected useful life. It also included how many installations over the average building lifespan, which we set at 60 years. And then also the building lifespan, carbon emissions per square foot, the installed cost range, and then the installed cost over the lifespan of the building. So that was a lot of information, and we wanted to take it and just graphically set that out for you just to have a better understanding of it. So the following graphs show some of those numbers, and they're basically different goals or different things that we find important when looking at materials, right? So the average useful life expectancy of a material is very important because the lower the ULE is, then the more times you're going to have to replace that over the lifespan of a building, correct? So some of the materials like brick, stone masonry, CMU, and have a higher life expectancy versus some of the more natural materials such as wood. And then we have glass, which is pretty low, and then the metals and fiber cement in the middle. So here's the CO2 graph. Again, that's carbon emissions per square foot. And some of these, it is very interesting to look at, right? Because we can see from the top of the graph, the circles are where the embodied carbon is, and then the squares are the building lifespan carbon emissions of that material. So again, if you have to replace it, then it's going to double, right? Or how many ever times. So some of these are super intensive in carbon emissions, like a glass curtain wall. You can see has huge carbon emissions, and then some of the other ones, like wood, of course, much less. And then, of course, we have the bricks, the CMUs, stone masonry is a bit high, but then we also we're looking at other options, like, for example, brick veneer is much less carbon intensive than like an actual full width brick. I also wanted to just explain the colors that we chose in this these graphs. They're the green are showing like that this is helping us achieve our goal more of having lower embodied carbon versus like the black, that gradient scale it helps us achieve the goal less. So it's just a range of numbers based on the data. And then we get into the graph for the cost of material per square foot. And again, the circles are the installed cost per square foot versus the squares, which are the total cost over the 60-year lifespan of a building. So again, some of these that we found really interesting are glass, again, is very, very costly. But then you have some that are already start off costly, like brick, but again, because you don't have to replace it as many times, you'll have to maintain it, of course, which will add some cost, but you're not going to have to replace the whole thing. And then you have wood, again, which is an interesting one. It starts off at installed cost $25 per square foot, but over the lifespan of a building, ends up costing more than a brick at $60 per square foot. And then just to kind of summarize this material analysis, like those first couple of graphs were data that we had like hard numbers for, and some of the goals and things that we find that are important. But we also have other goals that we're trying to meet with these guidelines. So along with having long lifespans, meeting our sustainability goals, our affordability goals, we also have equity goals, providing human scale elements in the designs of buildings, also providing durable materials that are resilient so they're able to withstand damage. And we also have important SABTED principles, which is crime prevention through environmental design, and the specific principle, which is the eyes on street. So the more eyes on street that you have, you're going to have more visibility, and you're going to create a safer environment. So materials, for example, like glass, casement windows, or curtain walls, they don't have a long lifespan in comparison to other materials. They are very high in embodied carbon, also in their affordability, right? But they do provide an equity aspect of livability, also human scale, and again, that eyes on the street concept. So all of these materials, like comparing them, none of them are, like, they all have their strengths in different areas. And again, the guidelines are basically our attempt to take into all of our goals into account, and to propose something that will try to get at a lot of these different issues, right? And that's just the rest of the material analysis. Again, they're all very good at different things. So, and then I'll just end again with the guidelines themselves, and then open up to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Muta. I see we have a couple questions here. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. First, I just want to say I'm really grateful for all the work that you've done on this. I'm really glad that we got deep into this discussion, because I know I've learned a lot. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we have a much better understanding of these different things, which is going to be not just helpful for this particular ordinance, but also in guiding design reviews of future projects, even if they are compliant. First, I want to ask a few questions, and then I'll let other commissioners ask questions, and then I want to later on discuss the amendments that I've been contemplating. But first, I wanted to ask, so on the chart of pollution by material, was glass on there? Because I was surprised that glass was at the top, but maybe it just wasn't included on the chart from before. Is that right?
Which chart?
So this chart that shows glass on the top, and then the earlier one that we've seen before?
Oh, this one.
Yeah. Is glass on there?
I don't think it was, no, it was not. So that was something that Cody added.
Okay. It's interesting that it wasn't included on that one. Okay, so that's new information that I wasn't aware of. So glass is the worst.
It's the worst.
On this metric.
Right. Right.
You know, obviously good, like you said, on eyes on the street and other ones. Okay. What is polypropylene? Is that, does that go by another name that we might be more familiar with?
That's it's another siding material. So you can see a photo of it here. It's similar to other siding, except for the way that it's made. It's made with a resin.
Okay. All right. That's it for now, and I'll come back to my amendments later.
Commissioner Campbell.
I have a question for you. So in the start of the presentation, there was a mention of the climate action plan, and I just wanted to go back to that really quickly and ask. So it sounds, what I heard, and I want to make sure I'm hearing this correctly, which is that this exists, that it is a goal to bring together multiple different departments to talk about how different policies would fit into this, but it seemed like we were deliberately separating the climate equity plan from the building material plan at this particular moment in time. Is that right?
Yes. And so again, the reason that we're not going to be including like more extensive regulations in the guidelines, we had a conversation with Rebecca Esau, who works for the Rocky Mountain Institute. It kind of explained to her what it was that we were trying to do. And I have another graph that I included at the end here, another image from one of their documents. That in a building, these are the typical high embodied carbon elements. So you have the structure and the things that make up the structure, the building envelope, and the finishes. So our guidelines only look at the very exterior cladding material, and they don't look at the full wall assembly. So it is a huge component, right, of carbon emissions, but it doesn't take a whole look at the entire building or the wall assembly or the rest of the building. That is why we decided that this should be that we will continue this, again, with other city departments for the climate equity plan.
Okay. It's an interesting separation, a deliberate separation, because it seems like that's exactly the conversation we should be having. And I think what I'm hearing you say is that the building material elements is a part of overall development, right? And so it doesn't make sense to look at one piece and not another. I would encourage us to lean more heavily into including things that exist in that climate equity plan into our building materials, into existing structure materials, into finishes, and a variety of these other things, so that we're more accurately evaluating building materials and development in general through that lens, and a further evaluation of development within that lens, and not a distancing of evaluation from that lens moving forward.
And well, I don't know that it's like so much of a distance though, like, because like I said, there are other ways to reduce embodied carbon, and the exterior building materials are not the only way. And if the guidelines were only looking at sustainability, then that would make sense, right? To like do all of it together. But we do have other issues that we're trying to deal with, like subted issues, also like equity issues, which are also huge. And also one of the reasons that we did start having guidelines back in 2014. Again, we saw that areas in the city that are more affluent are able to have nicer quality materials. And of course, we have the affordability aspect, which it might be cheaper initially to have like lower cost materials up front, but over the lifespan of the building, it's going to be much greater to fix those if you're constantly having to maintain them and also to replace them, which places a burden on renters, on homeowners.
This is more of a comment, so I'll save most of it for after you're done. But I do think that is a really interesting statement government can function in a lot of different ways, right? And one of the ways it can function is it can force the private sector or the public sector through regulations to elevate the way that buildings are built, right? Like to your point, the more affluent parts of the city were getting better building materials by requiring that of developers in all neighborhoods. The attempt, I think, would be to elevate that further. But I think one of the things we have to be really careful about is in a housing situation that we're in right now, and given the current demands that we're facing with climate change, the climate crisis, is that should we be limiting that to that extent moving forward, I think is a question for this group to consider. But I will leave that for a discussion to come.
I also want to add that the guidelines as we have them are very flexible. And so you are able or applicants are able to ask for alternative compliance in order to get some of those materials in different areas.
Yep.
Commissioner Alper?
I don't actually have any questions, so if other people have questions, otherwise I have a few comments, so I'll wait.
Commissioner Emmer?
Thank you. In the slides on material analysis, under the rubrics of, I think it's equity, human scale, and then SEPTED, can you walk me through sort of what are the metrics that are utilized to make those determinations in those categories for materials?
Yes. So I think for the equity piece, I was just comparing like some of the things like the lifespan, and also the initial cost versus the total cost over the lifespan of a building.
Okay.
So those, like definitely the first four columns, again, is like tied back completely to the data that we have, and the last four are a little bit more anecdotal and, have a little bit more of explaining. So then the human scale, that's also a guideline to incorporate human scale elements. So for example, a brick helps us achieve that goal more because it's more of a human scale element versus having like a large blank wall. And then resilience, that was based on just our observation of how materials are able to withstand damage from being close to the public realm. So like getting banged up by carts or by snow plows or such.
Got it, thanks. I just, I agree that there is a measure of subjectivity to those, further down than the really data-driven early ones. I was compelled by the SEPTED with the glass and the glass curtain because I live in a Section 42 building close to downtown, and we have apartment units on the first floor that are floor-to-ceiling windows, and it's harder to rent them because there is a sense of less safety, less privacy. I don't know that it works as like an environmental crime prevention in that case. And so I wonder, applied in different situations, if we see the same, ratings for these different materials. So
Yeah, and-
curiosity about that.
Sure. I think it definitely depends on the designer to address those, some of those issues. But I think the best outcome that we would like, right, is to have the eyes on the street while still providing privacy for the tenants.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions for staff? Commissioner Ford.
We haven't got a flag down here.
Oh.
Okay.
Raise your hand, there you go. We'll take it.
Here, we've got 3 right here.
Okay. Have the flag. Thank you. You made reference to that there were more sustainability regulations in, I think it was Chapter 540. Can you tell us what those are?
Not off the top of my head. But they are, I believe if you get a certain amount of LEED credits, then you get more of a premium for the building. I can look it up. Do you have more?
Commissioners, primarily those standards are incentives, for example, floor area ratio premiums that will be awarded for climate forward buildings. You can meet certain rating standards like LEED, for example, and as part of those rating standards that are referenced in the code, there is an element of material sustainability built into those rating systems.
Okay, Commissioner Meyer, you have it pulled up here?
I don't know if you want me to read the whole thing, Commissioner Ford, but I had it pulled up because I'm going to reference it in one of my amendment proposals later on. So this is Chapter 527, the plan unit development. The chart is 527-2. And this is the environmental sustainability and climate resiliency section. So these are the different ways that you can acquire a premium for a density bonus. So depending on which zoning category you're in, you can get either 1 or 2 additional floors of density if you meet certain things, and this is one of the options. So the environmental sustainability and climate resiliency one is that any performance standard, so LEED, PHIUS, EJC, etc., that achieves the Minnesota Sustainable Building 2030 energy standard, a 60% energy/carbon reduction from the 2003 average building baseline. The evaluation shall be submitted by a certified architect. Building utility, energy, and water information shall be submitted annually as part of the energy benchmarking program.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, I'm not seeing any further questions for staff. Thank you, Ms. Muda and team for that. Any discussion or questions by the commission related to this item? Commissioner Albert.
Yeah, thank you very much. I prepared a few words. This evening, I spent most of today reviewing the staff report and looking at the documents that we received from, I'm guessing, many of you in the audience. Extensive comments, and indeed, I've had not just 1, but 2 separate coalitions contact me urging us not to pursue these regulations. And right now, I've become more and more convinced that we have basically aesthetic building regulations that are masquerading as regulations focused on durability and sustainability. And frankly, I think they're being justified by unverified claims of supporting housing affordability. I really appreciate staff digging more into the embodied carbon of materials and durability, but I really, as evidenced tonight, see very few changes from our July 17th, the version that was put forth then. Like just a couple examples, a lot of weight was been placed on durability, yet no definition of durability in the regulations. A lot of discussion about high quality materials, feels very subjective. And I really feel that housing affordability, and I'm glad it was mentioned here tonight, that it really should be our North Star at this moment, given our current housing crisis. And yet, it's not even listed in the guiding principles. So I encourage you to look at that. Indeed, it's in the analysis portion of our packet justifying these regulations that states housing affordability continues to be a growing issue that Minneapolis residents face. And I agree, I can go more into that. But it strikes me, and it has struck the writer of a MinPost article from back in July, Bill Lindeke, who actually either sits now or formerly sat on the St. Paul Planning Commission, that these exterior building regulations could have the opposite unintended impact on affordability. So to sum it up, I really feel that beauty, it's in the eye of the beholder. I'd much rather these regulations had a stronger base, pardon the pun, in like either affordability or climate solutions, but that's where I stand tonight, and so I'll pause on making any motion, but I guess I would be inclined to support a motion that we continue this item to the next Planning Commission meeting when we can have our full commission leadership here tonight, which we're lacking our president, vice president, and secretary, and also that we notice and reopen the public hearing at that meeting. So I'll close there.
Thank you. Commissioner Meyer.
I also support continuing the item to our next meeting. In addition to being the president, vice president, and secretary, that includes also our architect and art person, who I'd really like to have involved in this discussion, and we want to hear from all of you, but in order to make that fair, we need to give public notice so that everyone can be able to join. So we want to have you all come back at the next meeting. But I'm still glad that we kept this on the discussion instead of continuing right away, because I wanted to get more into this discussion and to get more feedback both from commissioners and from the public about some potential amendments to consider. Some of the background about some of the conversations that have been happening about it. So we received a counter proposal from Cody Fisher, who was mentioned in the staff report, for a different way to do this. That was forwarded to the public record, so I don't know how people from the public can find that, but it's out there if you want to look at that more closely. But I think it's worth discussing, just so we have an idea of what it would mean if we were to really maximize for the climate impact. We have a lot of different criteria to be considering. We have affordability, aesthetics, eyes on the street, durability, and a new one that we've brought into the discussion is the carbon pollution. And the way I see it, we can kind of increase each one of those, which if we maximize from one, then we're shorting the others somewhat. The counter proposal that we received is what I would envision as maximizing the carbon one. And so they talk about setting a carbon budget for each project and escalating that budget each year, which I interpret would have the effect of eventually, after it's fully implemented, meaning that builders would be prohibited or would have a very difficult time meeting those conditions if they were building out of the high carbon materials. Like concrete, brick, and glass. So that's more on the maximizing on climate. I'm not going to propose that at this time, but it's good to have that in the back of our heads of what we could do if we really wanted to maximize on that. My amendments don't go that far, but they would push it. I would say more toward the carbon friendliness And I have 4 of them. I'm going to start with the easiest one. And this email where I propose my amendments should also be in the public record so people can see the whole thing and my reasoning behind them. So my first one, I was going to say that I propose to remove the guideline that the use of brick, concrete, glass, and stone masonry is encouraged where practical in all exposures and elevations facing the public realm. Staff replied to me and said that an alternative that they would be happy with, that I would be happy with as well, is to substitute that guideline for the use of more durable materials is encouraged where practical in all exposures and elevations facing the public realm. So it substitutes that specific list and just says more durable materials. And that's important to me because while I don't want to go down the full route of taking actions that would like prohibit or really make difficult brick or other materials, I would really like us to stop actively encouraging them. So taking that out of the list and just saying like more durable materials, that works for me. So if no other commissioners have a problem with that, I would suggest that staff just include that revision, and we wouldn't need to make an amendment on it. Medell, can you bring up the chart that shows the carbon intensity by how often you have to replace it, and that shows wood at the bottom? I just want to highlight that for a second. So when we take the full picture of both the initial installation and how often you have to replace it, wood score is really high on that. So I wanted to take an extra look at wood in particular. I'm not necessarily fully committed to putting this amendment forward, but wanted to have more discussion about it to allow wood at the base or podium. If staff are really opposed to that, then I'd like to see more in the same way that you shared the study on eaves. Like I'd just like to see more reasoning behind why you think that wood should be discouraged at the base and podium. My thought is, even if it has to be replaced fairly often, it's so low on the carbon intensity that, like, even if you replace it several times, it's pretty beneficial. I do hear the argument that would be something disruptive to people living in the building, that they have to have that replaced. But I wanted to highlight that one and look further at it. Another amendment, and this is where I brought up that sustainability guideline. I would really like to empower applicants who are really going the extra length to be carbon, to be climate friendly. So when we've got projects that are meeting certain conditions, I want them to have the ability to seek alternative compliance and use different materials. So I was going to propose to tie this to the same environmental sustainability and climate resiliency criteria that we use to give a density bonus. Like if they meet certain LEED or other requirements on their energy efficiency, if they meet that standard, then I would propose that they should also be granted the ability to use other materials if they can demonstrate that those other materials are low carbon materials. And then the last amendment, and the one I feel strongest about, so the 2040 plan, has an action step that, let's see, so Policy 5, Action Step D states, require that the appearance and materials of the rear and side walls of new buildings are similar to and compatible with the front of the building. So that's in the 2040 plan. I wouldn't propose to change that without a comp plan amendment, even though I personally don't support that and would propose changing it in the 2050 plan. But what the guidelines before us today include is an expansion on what the 2040 plan actually says. So the 2040 plan justifies the first part of the guideline, so the appearance and materials of the rear and side walls shall be similar to and compatible with the front of the building. That's almost exactly what the 2040 plan says. But then the second part of the guideline says, generally, the primary exterior materials incorporated on the front of the building must be incorporated on all sides. So that's new. That's an interpretation and expansion of the 2040 plan. So I would propose to delete that because I feel it could have really significant consequences, increasing the expense of buildings if an applicant chooses to go for the more expensive materials on each side, and could have the unintended consequence that an applicant who wants to really invest in the front-facing facade would be then forced to do all or nothing to either make that similar investment on all sides. And I just don't think that's necessary when something's facing an alley or something. So when we're weighing the different goals that we're trying to meet, I just think that that one puts too heavy of an emphasis on aesthetics and not enough on affordability. I would be open to somewhat of a compromise to maybe make that guideline applicable to, say, like buildings that are over 6 stories where the entire part of that is going to be pretty visible to the public. But if the guideline remains there as is and applies to smaller buildings near the street, like where the visual impact is just not going to be very high, then that would make me not vote for the overall package. So those are my 4 proposals. Thank you for letting me go on about them at some length, but thank you.
Okay, I did hear some conversation, if this body's interested in receiving more testimony on this or continuing this item, and I would say, I would entertain a motion to set an additional public comment period, and I see Commissioner Alper is in.
Yes, thank you. I would like to, on the spot, I can't think of what I wanted. I'd like to make a motion to continue this item to our next Planning Commission meeting, which I believe is October 16th, and also to reopen the public hearing on October 16th.
Second.
This is,
Chair Koski, if I may, so the public hearing has been held on this item as required by statute. That public hearing has been open and closed. The public hearing notification period for the October 16th meeting has passed. So in lieu of having a formal public hearing, we could have a public comment period at that meeting, which only requires a 3-day notification versus the 21-day notification for a formal public hearing, if that is achieving the same goal.
is that achieving the same goal?
Yes, yes.
All right,
I
so
would be open
change
to
the
that.
motion.
Change the motion to
Public comment period.
public comment period.
All right, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Campbell?
Commissioner Meyer, did you make an amendment motion, or are you just sharing that to put it in the public record for the purposes of this meeting?
Sharing it for
Okay.
for feedback. I mean, yeah, it's already in the public record what I'm thinking about, but I don't know how many people read through those documents. So I wanted to say it to everyone.
All right, I don't see any other discussions before the clerk calls the roll. So I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on that motion.
Commissioner Alper,
Aye.
Campbell,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Emmerich,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye?
Meyer,
Aye.
Kosky.
Aye.
We have 7 yeas and 0 nays.
That motion passes, and this item will continue to our 10:16 meeting. That concludes all of our items today. Are there any announcements from staff?
Yes, one update on some business that was before the commission a few cycles ago, I believe back in July. We had an application for the property at 2648 Marshall Street Northeast, which was for a cluster development that included some variances to allow development near a steep slope and bluff in the Mississippi River Critical Area Overlay District. The Planning Commission denied the variance to allow development within 40 feet of the top of a steep slope and the variance to allow structure placement near the bluff in the critical area. The property owner and applicant appealed the denial of those two variances. Those appeals were considered by the Biz Committee of the City Council last week. The Biz Committee overturned the Planning Commission's action on that, essentially approving the variances as requested by the applicant, and that will be considered by the full council this Friday. And no further updates.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements for commission? All right. With that, we have completed all items on the agenda for this meeting. I will, without objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. And our next regular meeting is Monday, October 16th. And the next Planning Commission Committee of the Whole meeting will be this Thursday, October 5th. Thank you, everyone.